increasing the money supply above what you wanted to hold in the first place. If when they drop the cash down, you just saved it, you don't go to the store and bid up prices. So that it is a key argument in the money supply growth leads to inflation, that this money supply ends up bigger than the money demand. But, as is pointed out in study question 70, that's impossible. In the real world, it is impossible to raise the money supply above money demand because every tool the Fed has requires the conscious and voluntary cooperation of a private sector agent. For example, if I have, where's my Treasury bill? All right. Here's a whole bunch of Treasury bills. It's actually an expansion set to a wonderful game on the Cold War called Twilight Struggle. But anyway, here's a whole bunch of Treasury bills that I've got, all right? And the Fed wants to increase the money supply, so they want to buy it from me. And I say, I don't want to sell it. There's nothing the Fed can do. They cannot force me. They cannot force the supply of money greater than the demand for money. If I don't want to sell this, then they can't increase the supply of money. They can't just drop it out of a helicopter. Well, they could, but they don't. Right? That the only means they use are means that require conscious, voluntary cooperation. Now, if they said, I'd like to buy this, and I'd say, sure. Well, then the supply of money wasn't greater than demand for money. I wanted that cash. I preferred that cash to the Treasury bill. So, the whole idea that you can increase, I was going to tell you, and as I said in class, the best argument or the best analogy I've ever heard for this is money in the real world is like a haircut. You cannot supply a haircut without a corresponding demand for a haircut. A barber cannot, during slow times, go ahead and make some extra haircuts so that when the rush comes in, they're all ready for it with haircuts. A baker can make extra cupcakes, but you can't supply haircuts unless there's somebody there demanding a haircut. It is impossible for there to be an excess demand, it is impossible for there to be an excess supply of haircuts. It's entirely possible for there to be an excess supply of cupcakes. And he's chewing on something again. Let's see what that is. Couple, come. Come, Couple, come. Okay, he's staring at me. Come, Couple, come. All right, he dropped whatever he had. I don't know what it was. I'll find out here in a minute. But it didn't sound like the carpet sample, which worries me. It was something completely different. All right. Now, let's see. What do you want to help me with, dog? Okay, so that was basically study question 70. All right, now 71. Let's see, and it's 36 minutes into the video. All right, so here's the next thing I'm going to do. I don't want to make each one too terribly long, so maybe I'll stop at 45 minutes, and then I'll do another one after that. Plus, YouTube cuts you off at some point. I can't remember where it is. So anyway, yes, thank you very much. He's cleaning me right now, which is good during the coronavirus, unless he has it. Now, let's see. The next two study questions are talking about the idea that, and hey, by the way, this is all post-Keynesian critiques of the monetarist view of inflation. And then these next two are saying, hey, by the way, the Fed doesn't have a whole lot of direct control over the money supply anyway. The money supply can increase all by itself, and the Fed has every incentive to allow it to do so. All right, now I don't know if you remember this from class or not. Let's hope you do. Don't panic, but it's going to be accounting. Assets, liabilities. Legible enough. All right, let's see. I'll just use the same example I did in class. T-bills, loans, reserves, and what I have over here. Checking deposits, borrowing, and net worth. All right. So here's going to be a sample bank, right? And let's give them 60 million in Treasury bills. I can't remember exactly what I did in class. 120 in loans, and I want to make sure this is going to work to where they have a decent net worth here. So let's see. Well, let's just do this again. I may have to erase something. Give me a second. All right, 200s. They got 180 right there. Okay, they're already in trouble. So let's make that. Oh, I think I was doing 160 over here. Let me work backwards. 30, 10. Okay, so we're going to have to add up to 240. That's what I was using in class. Yeah. I was using 160 right here. That's right. Okay. Let's see. I've got 320. I've got 240. Yeah, perfect. Okay. So, and I can't remember how much of this. That's the dog, of course. I can't remember how much of this I did in class, but let's do it again. Let's see. And if I'm going to stick to my 45 minutes, I've got about 7 minutes. Now, here's a sample bank. They're going to have assets, they're going to have liabilities. And let's say they have 60 million in treasury bills, which are extremely safe, but earn next to no interest. They earn something, but they earn next to nothing. Of course, the safest asset of all is just the cash reserves, but they earn zero in reserve. Zero in interest. The loans are the biggest money maker, but they're also the thing that might not get paid back. So it turns out there's this strange relationship between risk and return in the real world. Now, meanwhile, this bank has 200 million in checking accounts, so that's a liability. You can come in and take it out whenever you want to. Banks also borrow money, so they have borrowed 10 million. And the difference between the 240 in total assets and the 210 over here in liabilities is 30. In other words, think of it this way. If they could cash in all their assets at once and pay off all their liabilities, they'd have 30 left. So that's kind of the net worth of the bank. Now, here's how a loan works in the real world. You come in with this brilliant idea, and yes, did you find anybody? What are you chewing on? Oh, it's something he's allowed to chew on. Good. You come in with this brilliant idea, and let's see, maybe red would be better here. The banker says, man, that's a great idea. And I don't want you to walk out the door. All right, I want to make sure that I make this loan to you because after all, the loans are the big money makers and I think you have a great idea. So, and I have 14 days to come up with the reserves. So I'm going to immediately make this loan right now. And the manner in which I'm going to extend it is I'm going to hand you a checkbook and say, we've made an account for you that has 10 million in it. And they make that up out of thin air, all right? They don't actually have $10 million. They are really extending credit is what they're doing. But in our economy, the credit and the money that the Fed puts in are indistinguishable to you and me. And they make no difference to you and me where it came from. And so the bank merely says yes to the loan, bumps it up by 10 million, says, I'm going to give you the loan by giving you a checkbook where our accountant just typed 10 million in on the computer, and that's it. Now you can go off and spend money off of that. Now in the old days, without federal deposit insurance, and when banks issued their own individual currency, there was a big risk that, well, let's hope this bank lasts, because if it goes under, that money's worthless, all right? But that's not the case anymore, right? Now they are allowed to issue this in the form of U.S. dollars, and we have deposit insurance to at least the bank can still go under, but to protect that. All right, so how are they allowed to make a loan without having the sufficient reserves? Because in the real world, they must keep at least 10% of checking in reserve, and they're short $1 million now, all right? Well, they don't wait to get the $1 million first. As I said, I don't want you to walk out the door. How am I doing here on time? I don't want you to walk out the door, and also I got 14 days to make it up anyway, so I want to make this loan now. So, now, after the loan is made, I'm going to start looking for places to get the money. First place, the federal funds market. I'm going to check to see if another bank has extra money left over, and they're going to loan it to me overnight. Right? So we would put an 11 there, and we would put a 21 here. We'd borrow the money from another bank. But let's say that every bank is making loans. The economy's in expansion, all right? And so as a consequence, no other bank has extra reserves right now. And so what ends up happening is that now, given that we're all of these individual banks are competing for what is essentially an insufficient amount of reserves, right? There's not enough out there to cover everyone's loans that they have made here and then eventually there. And so that's going to start to push interest rates up. All right, they're competing amongst themselves to get these reserves. There aren't enough reserves, so it's going to push interest rates up. So what does the Fed do? Oh crap, we target interest rates. So we, in order to stop the interest rates from rising, here is what the Fed will do. The Fed will buy treasury bills. All right, the bank will sell treasury bills and change those into cash, and the Fed has every incentive to make sure that they do that because they don't want the interest rates to move. All right. Now, I've got about 2.5 minutes here to make my, if I'm going to stick to my 45 minutes. What this is trying to bring up is related to study question 71, which of course I emailed around to everyone. And now, in intermediate macro, they're going to need to know this in a lot more detail. I just kind of gave it to you as an example. You never know how to, you never need to know how to do this in our class. But I wanted you to see it. Now, in study question number 71, it says, what does it mean to say that the money supply is endogenous? All right. Well, it fluctuates primarily in response to private market forces. This number right here goes up and down in response to private market forces, and this is money right here, all right? So when the economy is in expansion, this number gets bigger as banks make more loans. When it's in recession, it gets smaller because loans are defaulted upon, and then the total amount of cash declines, all right? New loans aren't taken out, and et cetera. Banks can create money out of thin air. When a prospective customer requests a legitimate loan, banks are rarely in a situation where they cannot accommodate them. And when they do, the money supply rises. When loans are repaid, hence the money supply tends to automatically rise in expansion and contraction in recessions. That's number 71. And yeah. Okay, so we're at 44 minutes and 45 seconds. I'm going to stop there with this one. I'm going to take this sucker downstairs and start it charging up on YouTube. And then I believe what I want to do is to finish off all the contending perspective lectures and then do the intermediate macro lectures. Might make the most sense. So, may the force be with you.